The celestial hierarchy's grand exploration vessel, Immutable Truth, hung in the void between stars, its crystalline spires glowing with what its creators considered the perfect embodiment of order and civilization. Supreme Commander Valthera stood at her command post, all four hands clasped behind her back in the traditional pose of authority, as she observed the approaching vessels through the ship's quantum imaging array. "Curious," she murmured, her inner eyelids flickering in confusion. "These vessels appear to be utilizing some form of crude propulsion system our sensors cannot identify." She turned to her science officer, Renthal, whose specialized sensory organs were pulsing with an unhealthy shade of anxiety purple. "Report." "Supreme Commander," Renthal began, his voice modulated to the exact frequency of proper subordinate respect. "The approaching vessels are problematic. They appear to be traveling at velocities our instruments were not designed to measure. We are detecting significant violations of at least 3 universal constants of physics as established by the Grand Conclave of Scientific Truth." Valthera's facial ridges contracted in what her species considered a frown. The celestial hierarchy had spent the last 15,000 years perfecting their understanding of the universe. Their civilization had achieved perfect harmony, perfect order, and perfect understanding, or so they had believed. "Open communications on all standard frequencies," she commanded. "These primitives must be made to understand the proper order of things." The communications officer complied, but before he could transmit the carefully crafted first contact protocol message, a cheerful human voice filled the bridge. "Hey there. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Expeditionary Force vessel Coffee Break. We noticed you folks seem to be having some trouble with your sensors, so we thought we'd say hi before you gave yourself an aneurysm trying to figure out how we're moving." Valthera's facial ridges twitched involuntarily. The casual tone, the complete disregard for proper communication protocols, the implied superiority. It was all wrong. "This is Supreme Commander Valthera of the Celestial Hierarchy vessel, Immutable Truth. You will adjust your communication protocols to show proper respect to the most advanced civilization in the known galaxy." A moment of silence followed, then what the translator identified as laughter. "Oh my God. They're adorable." A different human voice cut in. "Hey there. This is Captain Marcus Williams of the Long Weekend. Quick question. How long did you say your civilization has been around?" "The celestial hierarchy has maintained perfect order for 15,000 years, Valthera declared proudly. "We have eliminated chaos, disorder, and the inefficiency of competition. All scientific truth is determined by consensus of our finest minds." More laughter erupted across the channel. 15,000 years. That's it. Captain Chen's voice was filled with what the translator identified as amused disbelief. "And you determined scientific truth by consensus. No wonder you're still using crystalline quantum matrices for computation. We abandoned those as inefficient about 200 years ago." Valthera's sensory organs began pulsing with stress crimson. "Impossible. Our systems are the pinnacle of technological achievement. Your crude vessels." "Our crude vessels are actually just personal yachts," Captain Williams interrupted. "We use them for vacation trips. Speaking of which, we're actually headed to the Andromeda Galaxy for a little weekend getaway. Would you like to come along? The trip only takes about 6 hours with our crude drives." The Andromeda Galaxy is over 2 million light-years away. Renthal blurted out, his professional demeanor cracking. "The journey would take thousands of years." "Oh, right. You folks are still stuck on that whole universal speed limit thing," Chen replied cheerfully. "Look, not to be rude, but has it occurred to you that maybe determining scientific truth by committee isn't the best way to advance? Just saying, we tried that back in our medieval period. Didn't work out great." Valthera's mind raced. Everything she knew, everything their civilization was built upon, was being casually dismissed by beings who treated intergalactic travel as a weekend excursion. But our order, our perfect system. "Yeah, about that," Williams said, his tone gentler now. "Perfect systems tend to stagnate. It's chaos and competition and failure that drive innovation. Here, let me send you some basic physics texts from our public education database. Fair warning, they might shake up your whole worldview a bit. As data began streaming into the immutable truth's computers, Valthera watched her crew's sensory organs shift through colors she had never seen them display before. Curiosity, wonder, excitement, emotions that had been carefully regulated out of their society for millennia. "This is," Renthal whispered, staring at the data with all four eyes wide. "This is beautiful. Supreme Commander, these humans, they've not just broken the rules we thought were immutable, they've rewritten the very language of physics itself." Valthera felt something she hadn't experienced in her 3 centuries of life. Humility. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "it is time for the celestial hierarchy to reconsider the meaning of perfection." "That's the spirit," Chen's cheerful voice replied. "Tell you what, why don't you follow us to Andromeda? We can show you around, introduce you to some other civilizations who figured out that progress beats perfection. We're meeting up with some Kardashev-type IOI civilizations for a physics conference." Well, they call it a conference. It's really more of a party where we swap cool theories between drinks. For the first time in 15,000 years, a supreme commander of the celestial hierarchy did something unprecedented. She laughed. "I believe," Valthera said, "that would be most enlightening. Though I suspect we may need an upgrade to our propulsion systems first." "Oh, don't worry about that," Williams replied. "We've got some spare fold drives in storage. Consider it a welcome gift to the actual galactic community. Fair warning, though. Once you start actually experimenting and innovating instead of seeking consensus, things tend to get a bit chaotic." Looking at her crew's excited faces, Valthera realized that perhaps a little chaos was exactly what they needed. Chaos, it seems, may be the perfect antidote to stagnant perfection. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Celestial Hierarchy buzzed with an unfamiliar energy as the High Council gathered for an emergency session. The crystalline walls, designed to maintain perfect acoustic harmony, seemed to vibrate with the uncharacteristically heated discussions taking place within. High Chancellor Zextor, his ceremonial robes shifting through carefully regulated colors of authority, raised all 6 appendages for silence. The assembled council members, their sensory organs flickering with various shades of distress, gradually fell quiet. "We have received Supreme Commander Valthera's report regarding the encounter with the humans," Zextor announced, struggling to maintain the traditional tone of dignified certainty. "The implications are deeply troubling. These beings claim to have surpassed our technological achievements through methods that violate our most sacred principles of orderly progress." "Preposterous," Elder Kavath erupted, his age spots glowing with indignation. "We must test these outrageous claims. Challenge these humans to prove their supposed superiority." At that moment, the Grand Assembly's quantum communication array chimed. An impossible sound, given that it was supposed to be secured against all unauthorized access. A holographic projection materialized in the center of the chamber, showing a human female in what appeared to be casual attire, sipping from a container. "Sorry to interrupt," Captain Sarah Chen said, not looking particularly sorry at all. "We couldn't help overhearing your discussion. Nice quantum encryption system, by the way, very elegant. Bit outdated, but elegant. Anyway, we'd be happy to participate in your challenges." The council chamber erupted in chaos, a concept that had been theoretically eliminated from their society millennia ago. Zextor's color patterns shifted rapidly through shades of shock and outrage before settling on a diplomatic neutral tone. You have breached our most secure communication systems," he stated, trying to maintain dignity. "This is unprecedented." "Oh, that." Chen took another sip from her container. "Sorry, force of habit. When we detect quantum encryption, our eye usually just automatically maps the pattern matrix and establishes two-way communication. You know, basic security protocol. Don't worry, though. We've also patched about 14 critical vulnerabilities in your system while we were at it. You're welcome. Elder Kavath's age spots were now pulsing with an almost dangerous intensity. You dare to modify our perfect systems. We demand proof of your claimed capabilities. Present yourselves for formal evaluation. Sure thing. Chen's hologram grinned. Though fair warning, last time we did this with an advanced civilization, it kind of triggered an existential crisis that led to their entire society restructuring itself. But hey, you folks seem pretty set in your ways. I'm sure you'll be fine. The council chamber filled with muttering as members debated this casual dismissal of their authority. Zextor raised his appendages again for silence. Very well. We shall convene at the great testing grounds. You will face 3 challenges of our choosing. Cool, Chen replied. Mind if we bring snacks? These things can get pretty long, and Marcus makes amazing quantum-shifted popcorn. The kernels exist in a superposition of popped and unpopped states until you observe them. Totally messes with your head the first few times. Before Zextor could respond to this baffling statement, the doors to the council chamber slid open, revealing a group of younger hierarchy members, led by Supreme Commander Valthera. Their sensory organs were pulsing with colors that had no classification in the traditional spectrum of acceptable emotional displays. High Council, Valthera announced, her voice carrying an unusual tremor of excitement. We have been reviewing the basic scientific texts provided by the humans. Their understanding of reality. It's beyond anything we imagined possible. They don't just break the rules we thought were immutable. They understand why those rules existed and how to transcend them safely. Impossible, Kavath declared. Our understanding is perfect. It was achieved through millennia of careful consensus and controlled progress. Yeah, about that, Chen's hologram interjected. We went through a similar phase about 1,000 years ago. Called it the Great Stagnation. Turned out that trying to achieve perfect consensus on scientific truth is kind of like trying to build a perfect sculpture by committee. You end up with something safe and boring that offends nobody, but also doesn't really push any boundaries. Valthera's sensory organs pulsed with agreement. The humans have shared with us their historical records. Their progress accelerated exponentially when they embraced chaos theory and allowed competing theories to challenge established wisdom. They failed countless times, but each failure taught them something new. Failure is inefficient, another council member protested. Our system eliminates failure. And that's exactly why you're still using technology we considered primitive 2 centuries ago. A new voice joined in as another hologram appeared. Captain Williams, casually floating in what appeared to be zero gravity, while manipulating complex mathematical models with his hands. Failure isn't just efficient, it's essential. Every failed experiment tells you something a successful one can't. The council chamber erupted in debate again, but this time with a different tone. Younger members were displaying unauthorized colors of excitement and curiosity, while the older members pulsed with shades of fear and uncertainty. The challenges will proceed, Zextor declared, trying to reassert control. Tomorrow, at the great testing grounds, we shall see if these humans can truly defy the universal constants as they claim. Awesome, Chen replied. Oh, and don't worry about preparing any testing equipment. The stuff you have wouldn't be able to measure most of what we can do anyway. We'll bring our own gear, you know, the kind that doesn't rely on crystalline quantum matrices from the Stone Age. No offense. As the holograms winked out, Zextor looked around the council chamber and realized something troubling. Several of the younger members were doing something that had been engineered out of their species generations ago. They were smiling. Supreme Commander Valthera, he said slowly, these humans, they are dangerous, aren't they? Yes, High Chancellor, Valthera replied, her own sensory organs pulsing with an unauthorized shade of excitement. But perhaps not in the way you think. They are dangerous to complacency, to stagnation, to the very concept of perfect order. And after reviewing their histories, I'm beginning to think that might not be such a bad thing. The great testing grounds of the celestial hierarchy had never seen anything quite like this. The ancient arena, designed to validate new technologies through careful, controlled demonstrations, was currently hosting what appeared to be a casual human picnic. Captain Chen and Captain Williams had set up what they called a tailgate party, complete with their mysterious quantum popcorn and something they called space beer. High Chancellor Zextor, surrounded by the most esteemed scientists of the hierarchy, tried to maintain his composure as he approached the lounging humans. "We are prepared to begin the trials," he announced with as much dignity as he could muster. "Sweet," Chen said, finishing her beverage. "What's first on the agenda?" Elder Kivath stepped forward, his age spots glowing with anticipation of restoring proper order. "The first challenge will test your claimed mastery over gravitational forces. You will attempt to create a controlled gravitational field that can selectively affect different masses." Williams smiled. "Oh, basic gravity manipulation. Sure thing. Hey Sarah, toss me one of those gravity balls we use for teaching kindergartners about field theory." Chen reached into a small bag and pulled out what appeared to be a simple metallic sphere. She tossed it to Williams, who caught it and held it up. "Watch this," he said, and then casually tossed it into the air. The sphere stopped midway, hanging motionless. Suddenly, every piece of scientific equipment in the arena began to float, while the observers remained firmly planted on the ground. The floating devices began to orbit the sphere in complex patterns, forming a beautiful, intricate dance of technology. "This is impossible," one of the hierarchy scientists exclaimed, his sensory organs flashing distress patterns. "The energy requirements alone mold." "Oh, the energy thing," Chen interrupted, munching on her popcorn. "Yeah, we solved that whole energy crisis problem ages ago. Turns out the universe is basically one big battery if you know how to tap into it properly. Here, check this out." She pulled out what looked like a small crystal, no bigger than her thumb. "This little guy contains enough energy to power your entire civilization for about a century. We hand them out as party favors at science conferences." The assembled scientists erupted in a chaos of unauthorized color patterns and exclamations. A younger scientist, her sensory organs pulsing with fascination, stepped forward. "But how?" "Well," Williams began, still casually conducting his orchestra of floating equipment, "it all started when we stopped trying to force the universe to follow our preconceptions and started actually listening to what it was telling us. Turns out reality is way weirder and more interesting than anyone expected. Want to see the math?" He gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the air, showing equations that made several of the older scientists' sensory organs start flickering in distress. The younger scientist, however, was leaning forward, her colors shifting to unprecedented patterns of excitement. This is beautiful," she whispered. "It's so elegant, so simple once you see it. Why didn't we ever think of this?" "Because you weren't allowed to," Chen said gently. "Can't have unauthorized thoughts disrupting the perfect order, right?" High Chancellor Zextor noticed with growing alarm that more and more of the younger scientists were displaying unauthorized color patterns of enthusiasm and curiosity. Even worse, they were beginning to ask questions that had been carefully engineered out of their society millennia ago. "Enough," Elder Kivath declared. "The second challenge will test your computational capabilities. Our quantum matrices are the pinnacle of—" "Oh, you mean these obsolete things?" Williams interrupted, gesturing at the crystalline computers surrounding the arena. They all suddenly flickered and displayed an ancient human game called Pong. "Sorry," he grinned. "Couldn't resist. Your quantum encryption was kind of asking for it. But seriously, folks, quantum computing was just the beginning. Wait until you hear about our dimensionally transcendent processing arrays. They're literally computers that exist in multiple realities simultaneously, using parallel universe computational theory to solve problems. Also great for gaming." The younger scientist who had been examining the equations raised all four hands. Could you teach us?" That would violate all protocols. Elder Kavath sputtered. Our educational system is perfectly designed to prevent any actual innovation, Chen finished. Yeah, we noticed. Hey, here's a crazy idea. Why don't we skip the rest of these challenges and instead have an actual scientific discussion? You know, where people are allowed to ask questions and challenge assumptions. Absolutely not, Kavath declared, but his voice was drowned out by an unprecedented sound. The younger scientists were cheering. High Chancellor Zextor watched as the carefully maintained order of millennia began to crumble. The younger generation was crowding around the humans, asking questions, displaying unauthorized emotions, thinking unauthorized thoughts. And the worst part was, he was beginning to wonder if this chaos might actually be progress. You know, Williams said, walking over to him while the younger scientists excitedly examined the gravity-manipulating sphere. We went through something similar in our history. Had this whole period where we thought we had everything figured out. Tried to suppress new ideas that challenged the established order. Want to know what finally changed things? Zextor found himself nodding, his own sensory organs betraying unauthorized curiosity. We learned to embrace the chaos, Williams smiled. Because here's the thing about chaos. It's not the opposite of order. It's the birthplace of new orders, new understandings, new possibilities. Your civilization has been perfectly stable for 15,000 years. Ours changes so fast, we can barely keep up. And you know what? We wouldn't have it any other way. As if to emphasize his point, Chen had begun teaching a group of young scientists how to make quantum popcorn, their delighted laughter filling the ancient testing grounds with the sound of change. The celestial hierarchy's grand military fleet hung in high orbit above their homeworld, 10,000 ships arranged in perfect geometric formations. Admiral Vexna stood aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion, watching as the last ships took their positions for what the High Council had assured her would be a demonstration of the hierarchy's mighty military prowess. She wasn't feeling particularly mighty at the moment. The humans' vessels are approaching, Admiral, her tactical officer reported, trying to keep the uncertainty out of his voice. Still just the three of them. 3 pleasure yachts against 10,000 warships. The absurdity of it made her inner eyelids twitch. She'd reviewed the reports from the testing grounds incident, seen the recordings of impossible technologies casually demonstrated between snacks and jokes. Now the High Council, in their infinite wisdom, had decided to restore their society's confidence through a show of military force. Open communications, she ordered, knowing already how this would go. Hey there. Captain Chen's cheerful voice filled the bridge. Nice fleet formation. Very geometric. Very orderly. This is Admiral Vexna of the Celestial Hierarchy Grand Fleet. She responded, following protocol even as her sensory organs pulsed with resignation. You will witness the power off. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Chen cut in, but you might want to move your fleet about 20 light minutes to the left. We're expecting some friends, and they'll need the parking space. Before Vexna could respond to this bizarre statement, space itself seemed to ripple. Where there had been empty void, suddenly there were ships. Thousands of them, each larger than her entire fleet combined. They seemed to bend reality around them, their hulls shifting through colors that shouldn't exist. Admiral, her science officer whispered, those ships, they're not just in our space. They're existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Our sensors are detecting quantum signatures suggesting they're operating in at least 7 different realities at once. Those would be the Andromeda Physics Conference attendees. Captain Williams' voice joined the channel. Sorry about the short notice. You know how academics are, always running a bit late. Vexna watched as more ships continued to appear, each one demonstrating technologies that made her fleet's most advanced weapons look like children's toys. Some seemed to be partially phased into other dimensions. Others appeared to be using space-time itself as a structural material. Your fleet really is quite pretty, though, Chen added kindly. The symmetry is very nice. Reminds me of the historical recreations in our museums. A new voice joined the channel, one of the visiting ships. Oh, are these the folks you were telling us about? The ones who still think quantum crystalline matrices are cutting-edge tech. How charming. I haven't seen ships like that since my undergraduate days in alternate reality engineering. The bridge crew's sensory organs were cycling through colors that hadn't been seen in their species for thousands of generations. Fear, awe, and most dangerously of all, curiosity. Admiral, her young navigation officer spoke up, his voice trembling with unauthorized excitement. Some of the human ships are offering tours. They say they're willing to explain how their drives work. That would violate protocol, Vexna started to say, but she could see she was losing control of her crew. Their carefully maintained discipline was crumbling in the face of technologies that shouldn't exist. Oh damn, sorry again, Chen interrupted. But you folks might want to shut down your main reactors. Those crystalline containment fields you're using are about to hit a quantum resonance cascade. Don't worry though, we've got you covered. Before Vexna could process this warning, every ship in her fleet was suddenly enveloped in a soft blue field. Their reactors, which had indeed been approaching critical failure, gently powered down. There you go, Williams said cheerfully. We've stabilized your reactor cores and added some basic safety protocols to prevent future cascades. Also took the liberty of upgrading your life support systems. They were kind of on their last legs. Really, how you folks manage with such primitive containment technology? Vexna looked around her bridge, at her crew who were now openly displaying unauthorized emotions, at the massive display showing ships that defied everything she'd been taught was possible, at the readings showing that these visitors had just casually saved her entire fleet from destruction. You know, she said slowly, I'm beginning to think perhaps our protocols could use some updating. That's the spirit, Chen replied. Hey, want to see something really cool? Watch this. One of the human pleasure yachts casually accelerated to faster-than-light speeds without any apparent drive activation, looped around the entire fleet in less than a second, and came to a stop exactly where it had started. Basic inertial manipulation, Williams explained. We teach it in high school physics now. Want to learn how it works? Before Vexna could respond, her entire command staff was raising their hands like eager students, and to her own surprise, she realized her hand was up too. Admiral, her tactical officer said, his sensory organs pulsing with what could only be described as joy. I believe we are witnessing the end of an era. No, she replied, watching as more of her fleet's crews began requesting permission to tour the human ships. We're witnessing the beginning of one. And perhaps that's exactly what we've needed for the past 15,000 years. In orbit above them, more ships continued to arrive for the physics conference, each one a testament to what was possible when a civilization embraced change instead of fearing it. The perfect geometric formation of the hierarchy fleet began to break down as ships moved to get better views of the newcomers, and Vexna realized she didn't mind at all. Order, it seemed, was overrated. 6 months after the infamous fleet demonstration, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Celestial Hierarchy looked very different. The once pristine crystalline walls now displayed holographic equations that shifted and evolved in real time, representing ongoing experimental research. Young scientists gathered in corners, arguing enthusiastically about theoretical models, their sensory organs displaying previously forbidden colors of intellectual excitement. High Chancellor Zextor stood at the center of it all, his own sensory organs pulsing with what he had finally admitted to himself was pride, not in unchanging perfection, but in progress. Chancellor, Captain Chen's hologram appeared beside him, still drinking from her ever-present coffee cup. Thought you'd like to know the first batch of hierarchy exchange students just arrived at Earth's Institute of Advanced Physics. They're already driving their professors crazy with questions. It's fantastic. Zextor found himself doing something that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. He laughed. How many rules have they broken so far? Oh, only about 17 fundamental laws of physics, Chen grinned. They're particularly fascinated by our quantum tunneling transportation system. One of them already proposed 3 improvements to it. You folks really were holding back a lot of potential with all those restrictions. Across the hall, Supreme Commander Valthera was leading a group of former fleet officers through a demonstration of the new hybrid drive system they'd developed, a fusion of hierarchy crystalline technology and human dimensional engineering. The prototype had exploded spectacularly 14 times before they got it right, and every failure had taught them something new. "It's chaos," Elder Kivath grumbled, approaching Zextor. The Elder's age spots were dim with disapproval. "Pure chaos. Look at them, conducting unauthorized experiments, questioning established truths, failing repeatedly, and advancing more in 6 months than we did in 6,000 years. Zextor completed the thought. "Tell me, Elder, have you tried the quantum popcorn yet? I find it pairs well with watching old certainties crumble." Before Kivath could respond, Admiral Vexna rushed into the hall, her sensory organs blazing with excitement. "Chancellor, we've done it. The prototype dimensional phase drive actually worked. We managed to shift the test vessel into 7 dimensions simultaneously." "Only 7. William's hologram appeared, munching on something. "Not bad for beginners. Wait till you folks figure out how to access the fun dimensions. You know, the ones where mathematics is more of a suggestion than a rule." Kivath's age spots began pulsing dangerously. "There cannot be dimensions where mathematics is a suggestion. That's chaos," Chen suggested helpfully. "Funny thing about chaos, it has patterns of its own. You just have to learn to stop trying to force it into neat little boxes and start appreciating its complexity." Around them, the assembly hall continued its transformation. Young hierarchy members were installing what they called a probability randomizer in one corner, a device that deliberately introduced elements of uncertainty into experiments. In another area, a group was using modified human technology to create small, controlled paradoxes for study. "We've received the latest data from the Andromeda Conference," Valthera announced, joining them. "The joint paper on crystalline-based dimensional engineering has been accepted. They're calling our approach elegantly unconventional. Apparently combining our traditional methods with human chaos theory has produced some interesting results." "Interesting?" Williams laughed. "You folks basically took everything we knew about dimensional engineering and turned it inside out. Half the conference attendees are still trying to wrap their heads around using crystalline matrices as dimensional anchors. Nobody ever thought of that because it was too orderly for dimensional work." Zextor felt his sensory organs pulse with a complex mixture of emotions that would have been strictly forbidden just months ago. Pride, excitement, uncertainty, hope, all swirling together in a beautiful chaos of possibility. "You know what the best part is?" Chen said, watching a group of young scientists successfully create a localized time dilation field. "You're not just copying our methods, you're creating something new, a perfect fusion of order and chaos. The kind of innovation that only comes from combining different perspectives." Speaking of perspectives, Williams added, "Wait until you see what the exchange students came up with by applying your crystalline computing principles to our parallel universe processors. Turns out perfect order and total chaos can work pretty well together." Kivath, who had been watching the proceedings with growing dismay, finally burst out, "But what of our perfect system? Our carefully maintained stability? Our stagnation?" Vexna suggested gently. "Elder, I've been studying human history. Did you know they have this concept called creative destruction? The idea that sometimes you have to let old systems fall apart to build better ones." "Exactly," Chen beamed. "And you folks are getting really good at it. Though I have to say, none of us expected you to take to it quite so enthusiastically. You've gone from perfect order to controlled chaos in record time." "Perhaps," Zextor mused, watching as another experiment produced a spectacular but informative failure. "That's because deep down, we were ready for change. We just needed someone to show us that chaos wasn't something to fear. Change can be scary, Williams agreed. But you know what's scarier? Staying the same forever in a universe that's constantly evolving. As if to emphasize his point, a junior scientist's experiment suddenly created a miniature rainbow of impossible colors, drawing excited crowds of researchers. The young scientist's sensory organs were pulsing with unauthorized but beautiful patterns of achievement and joy. Chancellor Valthera said, her own colors showing proud satisfaction. The first generation of new ships will be ready for testing next week. We've incorporated both human dimensional technology and our crystalline matrices. The designers are calling it a harmonious discord drive. Apparently that's a joke about combining order and chaos. Harmonious discord, Zextor repeated, enjoying how the contradiction felt. Yes, I believe that describes us quite well now. A civilization learning to dance on the edge between order and chaos, finding new truths in the spaces between certainties. Well, Chen raised her coffee cup in a toast. Here's to harmonious discord, impossible possibilities, and the joy of proving yourself wrong. Welcome to the real galactic community, folks. Trust me, it only gets weirder from here. Looking around at his transformed society, at the brilliant chaos of discovery, and the elegant order of their ancient wisdom finding new expressions, Zextor realized something profound. Perfection wasn't an end state to be achieved and maintained. It was a journey of constant growth, constant change, constant challenge. And they were finally, joyfully, chaotically on their way.